Jonathan Milan washed? Is that what I'm hearing?
Just getting started. Welcome back to the Spin Cycle Podcast, everybody. I'm Kaylee Fretz. Today on the show, Jonas Vingegaard and Tadej Pogačar both won bike races. Johnny Long rode 55 kilometers, and we do our draft. Let's get to it. All right, welcome to the show. Johnny Long, congratulations on your 55K.
We'll talk about it in After Dark, but yes, 55-kilometer ride survivor. In aid of Kit Nicholson's draft punishment. It has to be said. So credit to me.
Thanks all.
We'll get to that later in the show. Actually, in After Dark is when we're going to get to that. Welcome, Kit Nicholson. Welcome back to the
Hello.
show. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Got a case of the Mondays?
I mean, it was quite a busy weekend for February.
That's true. That's true. It's more like your Wednesday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to tomorrow when I'll just collapse. Anyway, that's
Tuesdays are the new Saturdays, I've heard.
Tuesdays apparently. So yeah, pubs are quiet.
Should we get into the bike racing? Because there's quite a bit of bike racing that has been happening over the last week or so. And crucially, as I alluded to, we have victories for the two biggest Grand Tour riders in the sport. Tadej Pogačar and Jonas Vingegaard both won their respective bike races. Can we start with Vingegaard? Because I think it was actually much more interesting, that story. So he was at Algarve, and was it the first stage or second stage where they opened with an uphill finish? First stage?
Second stage. It was the second stage. The
second
first stage that was actually recorded
First stage
as a
that
result.
counted, yeah.
Yeah, first stage was the two finishes better than one finish. And the second stage was an uphill finish, and he actually got himself dropped. He tried to attack, failed basically, and got himself dropped. So it wasn't looking great for Jonas Vingegaard. Roglič also not having a phenomenal Algarve. That was clear. But then he came back and ripped through the final time trial, right, Kit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm not, I'm not necessarily. I mean, yes, I am. I'll just go with it. I'm defending Jonas Vingegaard. I imagine that if I'd read his team's press release, which I don't usually bother doing because I know what they're going to say before I read them, but I would imagine that there's something along the lines of it wasn't a climb for him. So a more punchy rider, like the breakaway fellow Jan Christen and his teammate Joao Almeida, much more, to their sort of skill set, whereas Vingegaard is great at altitude and after a very long, hard day. It's also early in the season. His goals are further in the future. But fast forward to the final time trial, and he was suddenly in his element. And I mean, yeah, that final climb wasn't a long climb. It was 2.5 kilometers, but quite steep in places. And he put 11 seconds into teammate Wout van Aert, who'd obviously put a lot of time into everyone on the flat. And I mean, Vingegaard obliterated Roglic's time. He was almost a minute slower than Vingegaard. And but and with his stage win, Vingegaard also vaulted from 6th to 1st. Almeida stuck in 2nd with Jan Christen shifting down to 10th. And Laurens de Plus on the podium for Ineos Grenadiers, which is a pretty good result for them. So that's big news for Vingegaard, and putting his doubters to bed after earlier in the week.
That ITT course was not the same, but had similarities to the one that he won the Tour de France on a couple years ago, right? Sort of flat through the valley and then up for the last couple kilometers. I think that the climb in the Tour was a bit longer, a bit harder perhaps, but still a clearly something that Vingegaard was very good at. This sort of B-arrow across a relatively flat early, was it 17K, I think it was, for the one on the final stage, and then still managed to climb exceptionally quickly.
And he did it on his TT bike. Wout van Aert was one of the riders to do a bike swap, as was Laurens de Plus. De Plus was rather slower than Van Aert's. Vingegaard did it all on his TT bike. It's not to say that he would have been I don't know, that his technique would have been better suited to the road bike. He's one of those riders where, I'm sure Ronan would explain this much better than I would, but some riders are just better on the TT bike than others, especially at getting into an aero position. He's very light. He's very small. But yeah, it was a good day for Vingegaard.
Did Wout van Aert presumably keep his time trial helmet on the entire time? And is this why has he been practicing to keep the same helmet on when he's been riding with road bike, TT helmet and road races?
Well, he hasn't been wearing his mushroom helmet in the road races. If that's
Oh,
what you're
true,
saying.
yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, he's wearing like an older version of a TT helmet, basically, in the road races, which is what he's been pictured doing, and it's purely just to anger traditionalists like myself, probably. He did look that Giro that they wear is still the most ridiculous looking time trial helmet, and the part of the it makes more sense for example for Vingegaard to stay in a time trial bike, because that helmet in particular, it's very clear that you have to stay in the right position, and if you switch bikes, your position changes, right, like automatically. So yeah, I thought it was an unusual choice actually for Wout van Aert to do the swap, and I wonder if they just did it because sometimes they have to do it in more important circumstances, and they wanted to give it a dry run. I don't know
But
exactly
Van Aert's
what
very practiced at changing bikes from cyclocross. I don't think he
true,
needs
but
to
it'd be more
practice.
about the team than him.
I suppose,
right?
That's true.
Yeah, the whole sort of mechanic, like you said, De Plus had a much slower change, and that would be the reason to practice these things. Because I think, given the length of the climb, I would assume that even Van Aert would probably be faster just to stay on that TT bike.
How much are we reading into Roglic's performance? Because he turned up without shaved legs, which is obviously a huge deal. Had hairy legs. So is that a sort of preemptive understatement of how he's going to go?
He's done this before.
Yeah,
he's done the hairy legs in the winter before, and I kind of appreciate it as somebody who was a bike racer and shaved my legs for years and years, and now don't. Just watches my little leg hairs poke out of my tights in the wintertime, catching the breeze. I kind of appreciate it. I wouldn't read into it too much for Roglič. But that said, like, he normally really likes sort of short stage races like this, and the course should have suited him.
And he's targeting the Giro, so he's not got the excuse of peaking late.
Yeah, and he should be coming into some semblance of form now. I mean, the Giro is 2 months away, right? Like, it's if you're talking Tour de France, we're in the equivalent of sort of early May, mid-May. He should be coming into some decent form, and he really did not impress over the weekend.
No.
Where did he finish in the TT?
It was like I think it was 12th in the TT.
12th.
Yeah,
49 seconds down on a sub 30-minute effort, right? Because Vingegaard was 28-25.
Compared to Vingegaard and Pogačar, though, Roglič. I mean, maybe we are looking at Roglič and putting him in the mold that he doesn't belong in, because he's a GC rider of a slightly older breed, maybe, where they do. He's also an older man, so maybe he can't be as consistent for as long. But that we talk about the always-on mentality of Pogačar, who at the UAE Tour this past week, it was just a showcase for him practically, and Vingegaard has got to measure up to that because he is the nemesis. But Roglič, I mean, I say this knowing that Roglič does like to win as well, but perhaps he's not so concerned because he's focusing less on winning everything and more on just making sure he gets some big returns.
I wonder if he took a longer break in the fall than others might have. Like Vingegaard took a break quite early, right? He basically clocked out of the season in August, whereas Roglič raced and won the Vuelta, and then raced the World Championships, did okay in the T, like was 12th in the TT, 64th in the, so basically not okay. Just was relatively anonymous in the World Champs, and then he raced Emilia and Coppa Bernocchi afterward, and DNF'd both of them. So I think he ended last season cooked. Like totally cooked. And I wonder if he took a longer break and is kind of coming back a bit slower, and hence the unshaved legs, and hence the sort of lack of concern about Algarve. We did just say we're not that far out from the Giro, but we're still pretty far out from the Giro. So I think he does have time.
Yeah, what's interesting though is that Red Bull, 2 years ago we were talking. Was it 2 years ago? It wasn't even 18 months ago. We were talking about how this was Roglic going to Red Bull, and he was their guy for the Tour de France. And he's kind of. It's almost like he's. I don't know. He's let his hair down. He's actually less bothered, and he's now just going to race and do what he likes. And they've got other riders. I mean, it's a fairly quick turnaround. I mean, maybe it's just realism. They know that they really can't do much more than threaten for third, and so they'll target other things. But maybe I don't know, that there've been more debates about program, and he didn't know where he was going to be racing. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't expecting to do that sort of time trial so soon, or he's working on his position. Maybe Ronan would present that idea. Maybe he's got a new setup. I don't know.
Well, remember
that should be solved by now.
That should be solved.
Should be solved by now.
Remember when Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe came out and said last season they hadn't fully implemented the changes, the Red Bullification of the team, where like they didn't have the resource and the funds yet. So this would be the first year of Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, and we have that match with Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe by name, at least, at the Tour de France, who were very down on Roglic's performance. Like you had Ralph Denk and the team like really not very happy. And Roglic was always going to be like a 2 or 3 year sort of gap to this supposed new era of them being a super team. So maybe there's pressure on him being a win now guy, but then you can't really be a win now guy with the other two. So that's probably why Roglic is relaxed. And I mean, Roglic has at least. Do you remember the story about how he brought all the different salads to the team? Where
That's
like
right.
he came in and he was like, no, we can have all these salads. And then, or was it less salad? Or was it fewer salads?
It was fewer salads.
Fewer salads, less choice. Yes, that was it.
Yeah,
So
it was streamlining the salad bar. Yeah.
What, the actual bar or the choices? Maybe both.
I think the choices.
Do you reckon they put one of those big Giro helmets just at the front of the?
Maybe it's all served in Giro helmets.
Yes. Yeah. What, you close the visor and then you can like shake it up with whatever dressing you've got. Oh,
that's a good idea.
That's a
good idea. All right, should we move on to Tadej Pogačar?
I think we probably should.
Yeah, so Algarve, that's Algarve. You could take some things, but you can't take that much out of it, right? Like we can pretend that we use it as a crystal ball, but really not so much. Let's move over to UAE, where we can take even less, I think. And so Tadej Pogačar won the UAE Tour. I think we said he would last week prior to him even doing so. It was pretty obvious.
I'm going to predict that he's going to win it next year as well.
Probably.
Let me be the first to say.
I think you're probably right. Overall, Julia Ciccone in second and Pello Bilbao in third. And Ivan Romeo from Movistar, sneaking up there into fourth, who was a name that we mentioned from, was it TDU? Right?
No, that's his brother. I checked.
Oh,
this.
really?
I thought it was, or cousin.
Different Romeo.
It's a different Romeo. I think.
What, Javier?
No,
Ivan Romeo.
I was Sergio Romeo. Okay, you're gonna hear the draft later. I was searching for Ivan Romeo, but was looking at Javier Romeo. I was like, I swear that he was riding the UAE Tour.
Ivan Romeo raced. They're
sorry,
not
I was
related.
thinking of Ivan Romeo at Valenciana, who we mentioned.
Okay.
Yes.
There are a lot of Romeos.
Wolf, so many
Romeo
Romeos.
armistice, please.
Anyway, stuck himself in there in fourth. I mean, what does this mean for Tadej Pogačar's legacy? What do you two say?
It means that he's pleased his overlords because they were all there. It was basically just a showcase for Pogačar, and that we talked about his flop on stage one last week when he went too early, but then he was active almost every other day. Obviously in the TT he wanted to do well. He got involved in the crosswinds on stage 4. He then broke away on stage 5. Took a day off and got bored on stage 6. Great quotes there. And then on stage 7, he was again involved in crosswinds and echelons, which split the peloton and rode the way to the finish. And then Florian Vermeersch, remember him? He was the last mountain domestique on Jebel Hafit.
Yeah, we spoke about that on Friday because earlier in the week, Jebel JC was as well. And we were saying it was very sad to see. Do you agree, Kit, or not?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's odd to see. But I think he's still going to be going to the classics, and he didn't get all the way up the hill. Maybe it's a building of endurance. Maybe it's going to be exactly what he needs, unless he's losing a load of weight and he's suddenly a climber. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
What were his quotes on stage 6, Pogačar?
Pogačar, he just said, because they asked him about stage 5 and why he. Well, they asked him about his breakaway on stage 5, and he said he commented on stage 6, which he spent in the peloton, and it was an odd stage, mostly in Dubai, going between two universities, and so he said he tried to enjoy the city, but he just got a bit bored, really, and that's basically all he said. But there was there was some. It was a more interesting UAE tour. I was going to try and offer a sort of debate topic and say it was actually a more fun race than usual. It was a more fun race than usual, but the bar is pretty low.
It wasn't even that long a stage, the one he got bored on. Tim Merlier won it in 3 hours and 16 minutes. That's like a short.
Wow.
They probably rode home too, or whatever. They probably rode extra on top of that that day. Yeah,
it's weird when you see that because they're like a lot of the time in the Middle East, it's all on highways, like quite big, fast highways or bike paths. But then what happened? You have like team cars sort of protecting small bunches of riders who are just basically riding down a motorway, and it looks incredibly dangerous and probably is, but nothing ever seems to go wrong, touch wood. But yeah, it's a bizarre thing to see after they've just ridden 180 kilometers or whatever. I have a question from the UAE tour, and you say how it was a bit of a procession for Tadej Pogačar. So I was watching on Sunday morning UAE tour, then before the what was it, Ruta del Sol, but it on Eurosport was labelled the Algarve, and then it was all weird. Anyway, in between that, because I think the UAE tour finished early, there was a repeat of the Singapore Criterium from last year. You know how they just chuck in like 30 minutes of whatever they can find on the tape? And I was there and questioning which one was more of like a fake race, the Singapore Criterium or the UAE tour, which
is an
Tadej
actual fake
Pogačar
race.
has to go to win, to make everyone happy. Well, everyone who pays him happy.
I think it's a real race for the sprinters, and a fake race for the GC people,
and an opportunity for people like Oscar Onley, Finn Fisher-Black, Giulio Ciccone, Pello Bilbao, the Movistar chaps to see how they measure up to Tadej Pogačar and then go home crying.
That's true. I mean, hey Kaylee, your Jonathan Milan guy got beat a couple times, no? Hot seat.
Very close on stage 4.
Yeah.
Stage 5 was very, very close.
He also won 1 or 2 of them.
He won 2.
2.
He came second in the stage 5 and third in stage 6.
Third in both. So
third in both. Okay, but they were very, very close.
Jonathan Milan washed. Is that what I'm hearing? Maybe.
Well, he was
just getting started.
But Jonathan Milan is not a pure sprinter in the same mold as Tim Merlier. He's a bit more punchy, but he clearly proved that up against Tim Merlier on a good day, like on stage 5, he could have gone either way.
That's true. The only other note I have from the UAE tour is that I believe it was Friday stage 5 where the peloton are going along big highway, seen it 100 times before. And then a sort of grey / blacked out Range Rover pulls up on the adjacent road where the traffic should be going the other way. But then it quickly becomes apparent that road has been closed as well. And the person aside must be a VIP, maybe one of the...
Maybe the VIP?
It was hard. It's hard to know. I didn't do enough research because apparently there are multiple sheikhs. But it must have been a sheikh who got the best view in the house, sort of like his own personal Giro train that runs.
He was an
MIP,
the most important person.
The most important. Do you think he goes around seeing that the MIP on all the helmets and gets confused? He's like, I know I own a lot of helmets, but they can't all be mine. So that's kind of fun. And look, we spend a lot of time criticizing billionaires and oligarchs and whatever. But if you were a person with hundreds of billions of dollars, petro otherwise, that you kind of just stumbled into by chance of birth, is this not how any of us would choose to spend our lives and our money? Can we at least give His Royal Highness, whichever one it may be, the benefit of the doubt that we would be doing the same thing?
That we would be no better. That's for sure.
we may be a bit less oppressive to the society we govern, but we would be there probably in a nice air-conditioned car watching bike races.
That'd be fun.
Up close.
Danny Van Poppel got a yellow card. Second one.
Second yellow card of the season.
But it was on day 31, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, it does. So this note in the run sheet is actually inaccurate.
What?
Yes.
Who did this?
Me.
So it's his it's his
Shock.
second yellow card in the season. His first one was on stage 2 of the Tour Down Under. And so if you get there are lots of crucial windows that we have in our heads now. Thank you, UCI. And one of them is 30 days. But the number of yellow cards you have to get in that time is 3 to get a 14-day suspension. If you get more than one yellow card in one race, you get disqualified and a 7-day suspension. But what Danny Van Poppel does have to keep in mind is that if he gets 6 in a 365-day span, he'll get a 30-day suspension. And he's, if he keeps trending in the same direction, especially if he goes to it, he's Sam Welsford's last lead out man. I don't know what Sam Welsford's plans are for the season, but you only need a long stage race, and you could easily get more than one with the and also Danny Van Poppel has already said, he's already come out with quotes saying they've got to be consistent. And it made me wonder also that actually once you have got more than one yellow card, you are going to become a target. Probably you'll be an easy guy that they'll be watching. So he will be having to think about it.
That happens in other sports too. Like you get a reputation for either like simulation or for being someone who fouls or gamesmanship. And Danny Van Poppel has Paris coming up in March, the Tour of Hungary in May, the Tour of Suisse in June, and then the Tour de France in July. So that's a lot of race days.
I bet he does more than that because Welsford is on the Brugge de Pana start list, and Gent Wevelgem and Scheldeprijs, and I bet Van Poppel's at all of those. That said, if you've got 365 and you take a month off, it'd be a good way to get out of Guangxi or something. Right?
So we're going
you get to like August and he's on 5. He's going for 6.
You see this happening with footballers, because if you pick up a certain number of yellow cards, you get a suspension. And often like around Christmas and New Year's, you will see players like picking up that extra yellow card that means that they're home over the Christmas period. So yeah, maybe this is the innovation that it's brought us, is that riders will now be able to avoid Guangxi.
I guess you don't want to miss like Worlds, so maybe after that. But
I mean, still to be convinced on the yellow card thing.
Again, until I see like stripy jumper commissaires driving up next to the peloton and waving a yellow flag at guys, then I'm not interested.
Yeah, agreed. I think we can all agree on that.
We're strolling down the lane here, and we're gonna peek into Crash Courtyard because we had some nasty crashes over the weekend. Some broken collarbones, the whole week. Yeah. So who's on the injured list now?
Well, notably, old pal Chris Froome.
Oh.
And who has fractured a clavicle, a collarbone to layman.
Did you see his bike? Did you see the photos of his bike afterwards?
A wheel had evaporated. And then Romain Bardet, it looked like it was a concussion protocol withdrawal, actually, because he walked away from the race. And it transpired he didn't have any lasting injuries. He is out of the races this coming weekend, but it looks like that is some sort of safety in action. But yeah, I mean, we quipped before that we started recording that those guys, is it crashes or is it having a fall?
The 35 plus crowd, yeah.
That's so
fall
harsh.
Down, break a hip.
When those super skinny guys, and like Froome and Bardet both belong to that club for me, where they just look like,
those little like things that you can wear around your neck and you can push the button when you have a fall.
Oh, well, I'm glad I've been one-upped now.
You've come with some energy today.
I am the same age, so I'm allowed to do this.
Should we bring you on for the tour?
Yeah.
Well, the classics actually, because if we're not all in the same room, then you won't be just be able to shout for help if you've fallen and can't get up.
I'm fallen and I can't get up. Do you guys have those commercials?
Yeah, and the buzzer is always in the corner.
Yeah.
That's basically what funds the whole cycling on TV. Yeah. And donkey sanctuary. So it's basically old people that can't get up and donkeys that can't get up. But yeah, when those like skinny and kind of old guys fall, it just is so much more horrible. I don't know why. Like, well, for obvious
when
reasons,
they're all limb as well. We know how long Chris Froome's limbs are.
We know how many limbs Chris Froome has. It's 4.
It's all over the place.
Crashing sucks. Crashing sucks. Like, it just, I think we forget sometimes because we watch it happen and a bunch of dudes fall down and they all slide all over the road. Like, they're in their undies basically, and they just jumped out of a moving vehicle at 50k an hour. It's so gnarly.
With no padding.
Yeah.
Did you see Tim Media's crash beyond the finish line? It looked quite a heavy fall, and he hit his head, but he was fine. I mean, he won by even more on the following day.
That's the secret. Well, Egan Bernal crashed as well, which we heard about at the Classico High-End, which, despite you both watching the entirety of the race, didn't seem to catch that on camera.
Didn't catch that one.
So thanks for that.
Well, have you seen the coverage of that crash, Johnny? There isn't really any coverage of that crash.
Okay.
The camera catches him behind a tree.
Oh, okay.
He just disappears.
He broke his collarbone as well, but he's already back on his bike and riding up Col d'Ez, yeah. On the same day that the Tour des Alpes-Maritimes de Var.
Yesterday, they went up it first thing in the stage. Apparently, he went up and then cheered them past or something. Nice support there.
But that's freakishly quick to be back.
That's cycling though.
Category 1 climbs, no?
I think he got it plated, which means you can basically get back on the bike like almost immediately, which is wild.
And then that plate then comes back out. Presumably
sometimes
in winter.
Not. Yeah, it depends.
Depends how much.
How heavy is it?
They're titanium.
10% of Egan Bernal's weight, though.
Yeah, quite light. Unfortunate. They pile up in Crash Courtyard over the season, but we've already got a fair number already in there, which is.
I was sad to see Arvid de Klein go down in the same crash as Chris Froome, he's usually up there with the big sprinters in those, and he quite likes the Middle East races. I mean, he always does well in them, but he had a really bad, I don't know, he had a lot of bad luck. As Tour de Pro Cycling's pretty much lone pure sprinter, and he's also broken his collarbone, and he looked absolutely shattered by the news, sitting on the road, just for the classics. He'll be at some of the classics, but it just sucks and you can just see the season just kind of disappearing in front of their eyes almost. I mean, it's obviously not the whole season, but you can just see their hopes and dreams evaporate when they're sitting on the road like that.
They've spent so much time on a bike in the last like 2-3 months. Like you train more in the winter than you do in the summer, right? Because in the summer you got races, you're trying to recover, you're trying to but in the winter they're just 20, 30 plus hours a week over and over and over and over again, and then you just watch that go poof, right? You've just spent months of your life and 6-7 hours a day on a bicycle in the rain, poof. You can see why you'd just be in tears on the side of the road. Like it sucks. And granted, like I said, collarbone can be actually among the least worst.
Well, I think Matthew Heyman, 2016.
Yeah, exactly. It can be all right, but it's one, it still really hurts, and two, it is going to mess with at least at minimum the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks. Which, if you're a classics rider, that's your season, right?
Matthew Heyman was an elbow, wasn't it? But still, he was back before the end of the classics.
Yeah, well, Matthew Heyman was also the first sort of indication that riding inside could be incredibly effective, right? He basically just sat on a trainer for like 4 weeks, and then we saw that later when we sort of came out of COVID that all these riders have been inside on Zwift for weeks and weeks, and they came out flying. And it's actually, I think it's that Heyman thing, and then COVID, it's helped to change the sport. It's one of the things that has made the sport so fast all the time, is that you've got riders training inside when they wouldn't have ever bothered before. Anyway,
there's a headline somewhere with Arvid decline, with like declined, and we should get there first before someone else does and have it ready to go. Like in Peep Show when Jez has planned to sell the headline 3-0 Walcott for when the footballer Theo Walcott turns 30, and he's going to sell it to the Sun newspaper. I feel like we could do that with decline. That's a good. Usually the riders don't have names that work that way, no?
Decline of decline?
Well, after he's got good, yeah. After he's got really good, then is on the downwards.
That one's way in the future. That's a 10-year plus.
I have to put that in my notes. Hopefully we're all still here.
Incline, decline? Decline, incline.
When he gets dropped, yeah. Maybe we should have had this conversation not on air. My bad.
All right. I think that's the update. That's what's going on.